Apple just announced iOS 26. It's one of their biggest design overhauls that we've seen in years. I've been using it for a few days now, and I think there's a lot here to like, but before this was announced, I was actually using something different. Instead of going to iOS 26, maybe you should do this instead. This is the Light Phone 3. It's a minimal device that does less, but still gives you a lot of the, basic functionality you would want out of your phone. And when I first saw this, I was like, man, I absolutely love this. I love the aesthetic, I love the build and the way it looks, but also the idea of, stripping away some of those things that are maybe distractions or that you don't necessarily need. That really speaks to me. But even I, someone who's been known to spend way too much money on ridiculous things, couldn't get myself to spend the money on this phone. It's just a little too expensive. And after seeing the reviews and seeing what people have thought, well, my suspicion was right. It doesn't quite seem like the money is worth it, at least right now as I'm making this. But it sparked the idea of, hey, maybe instead of buying a new phone, maybe I could just make the phone myself. A phone that still accomplishes the, ethos of that minimal phone. So stripping away a lot of the distractions, but also fixing some of those issues it has as well, which means still having access to critical features if I end up needing them. And well, that's exactly what this is. And one of the issues with the Light phone is that it's stripped away a bit too much. You didn't have access to things that, honestly, most of us actually do use, if not every single day, at least on a weekly basis. And for me personally, those are things like social media apps, which, for work, I do actually have to access, or different email clients, transit apps, all kinds of things that I actually do need access to. Maybe not every single day, so I don't want them in my face, but if I ever do need them, well, if I can't access them, well, it's automatically a non-starter. And so for me, that's exactly what the Light phone fails at. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm the first person to come up with an idea like this, but after I've put it to use, it actually is nearly perfect. And I'm just going to go over everything I've done here, what this device is, what it does, and why I'm doing it. I'm going to cover everything. And if you want to do this on your phone, well, it should actually be pretty simple, but it makes a pretty big difference in my life. So this starts life as an iPhone 13 mini. Yeah, it's a device that's a few years old right now. They don't make the mini iPhone anymore, but the mini devices are still, they have a special place in my heart. I absolutely love them. And so it actually felt like the perfect opportunity to get this, system, this idea off the ground. And luckily, the iPhone 13 mini is actually incredibly affordable right now. I only paid around $250 for this phone in mint condition, and when it got here, it actually is in mint condition. Now, at the time, it had a bunch of flaws when it first came out, but the biggest one definitely for sure, and especially when buying a used one like I did, is the battery life. Battery life on the mini phones has never been great, and now with these older phones, well, that battery life is going to diminish. You can get them in the 80% range. You can get one that's just been swapped for a new battery. There's different options. So I wanted to spend, around 200, 250 bucks, and with that, I was able to get a phone that had around 80% battery life. Is that great? No, but because of the project I was working on and because of what I wanted to accomplish, the battery life honestly isn't that important. The whole goal here is to not use my phone. And so this is a perfect canvas. It is a clean slate, a small portable device that you don't actually want to use that much because of some of the flaws it has. But that is exactly the point here, and it works. Now, beyond the device itself, there's a few other accessories I've added here. First is a matte screen protector, which if you've watched some of my videos, I absolutely love these. But for this, setup in particular, it actually does help a lot because I'm going with a monochrome look. The matte screen protector, that, flat look, I think actually lends itself well for this color scheme. So I'd actually recommend it. I'll leave the one I got linked down below, but honestly, any of them are fine. And then on the back, I just got a deburring skin so that we can get rid of that Apple logo. Not necessary, but it keeps the phone just feeling clean and a little bit more sleek. But then we get to the software, and well, this is where things get interesting. As soon as you turn it on and open it up, you notice that, hey, it looks a little different because there's really no icons here, just a few, and everything I use on an absolutely daily basis is right here at a thumb's reach. So I'm just gonna go over what I did to get this and why I chose what I did. Real quick though, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Kinsta. Kinsta is the #1 provider of managed hosting for your WordPress site. And they give you pretty much everything you need. You've got 24/7 support. They can migrate your site over for you. And well, it's super easy to use too. Now, Kinsta is trusted by over 120,000 different companies. In fact, they are rated #1 in hosting by G2, and they outrank 357 other companies to be #1. That's a pretty big deal. There is a ton of competition in this market, but they are at the top. And well, that is for a reason, because they actually deliver on what they claim. If you use them, you can get up to 200% faster performance on your site, and you get great security like enterprise level firewall, and you can get an SLA backed uptime guarantee of 99.9%. So if you use Kinsta, well, you're gonna have a site that is fast, that works, and that is actually secure. But one of my favorite parts, like I said, is that they have 24/7 support with an actual person. So if you need help at any time, you can ask them, and well, they can actually solve the problem for you in a quick amount of time. And if you're running a business or you have a site that really needs to be running, this is invaluable. So if you want to give this a shot, check it out for yourself. I'll leave a link down below, or you can use this QR code on screen. With this, you can get your first month free. And if you decide to keep going, you get a 30-day money back guarantee. And all you have to do is, well, check out that link. Now, the idea of a minimal phone, it pops up year after year, and it seems like something a lot of people really want, but I haven't found a device that actually does it well. But the point of these types of devices is really, at least the way I see it, is, how do we live in the world that we've created with all this technology, instant communication, phone calls, maps, internet connection? Because the world we live in kind of functions with those ideas in mind. Well, how do we utilize them without being consumed by them? And that's kind of what I've always thought a minimal phone is. I built my own. This is a minimal, small device that has the capability to do absolutely everything I need, but is set up in a way to just give me the essentials. So it kind of solves the problem of the Light Phone 3. With this, I have my distraction-free setup, but at any moment, I can do more with it. Now, as you can see, I've only got 5 options here on the screen. Very simple, very minimal, but they are the things I use absolutely every single day. Maps is one that I find myself reaching for all the time, and whenever I have to search for it, it just becomes annoying, so I've put that right here on top. The second one is music. There's a bit of a trick behind this one, but I'll talk about that in a second. So I'll consider that kind of my entertainment category. Then there is just internet. So this is my Safari, which is where I mainly search for everything. And then down below on the dock, I've just got my phone and I've got iMessage. That's it. Those are the things I use every single day. And with this setup, I can get 90% of the things I need done. Now, I'll cover the design in a second, but I do want to talk about a few other things, because like I said, what is great about this is I can have this minimal, look, this minimal feel, but I don't have to sacrifice having those apps that I do occasionally need on a more weekly or even monthly basis. They can still be here. They just don't have to be what I'm looking at all day. So if I just swipe over, well, now I've got the app library and I can see the different apps that if I need to access them, I can. But while we are here, you may notice something else, and that is that I've put the phone into monochrome mode. Now, this is an accessibility feature that you can easily turn on. And there's, true accessibility reasons why you'd want monochrome. But for my case, and for many people's case, the idea with having a monochrome display is that it is less distracting. It's less enticing. You don't have app icons, screaming at you when you're searching the web. You just kind of have a page of text and all the pictures kind of disappear. It actually does help quite a bit in making the phone less distracting. In a way, it actually kind of sucks to look at. It's not a fun thing to look at, but that's exactly the point. When I'm, using a phone like this, the whole point is to be less distracted. So I kind of look for the information I need and then I'm done. I don't feel like I need to keep going. And well, a lot of that can really be, thanks to this monochrome look. And so because of that, the rest of the phone is also with this monochrome idea in mind. So if we go back to the home screen, well, this wallpaper is a custom one that I designed. So I can have this subtle wallpaper in the background that, hides the notch, but isn't just black. It, has a little bit of flair there. Then I can have these words written out for my icons. And then on the bottom, the dock is kind of transformed a bit to just, give it a bit of a different look. I don't know. This is just what I designed based on what I like. I like the way it looks. I'll leave it linked down below if it's something you want to download and try for yourself. But to get the icons to function and look this way, well, there's two things going on here. First is that these words are baked in to the wallpaper itself. So if you download this wallpaper, I'll include two versions, one with the words, one without, just depending on what you're looking for. But if you want these words, you're gonna have to bake them in. But to actually make them work and to make them function, well, I'm using an app from my friend Sam Beckman. He makes great videos here. I'll leave him linked down below. But he has an app called Clear Icons, which makes you, make your own icons. And so for this one, you basically just take a screenshot of the wallpaper you're using, and then you apply that image to the icons. And so it kind of blends in. If you scroll back and forth, you can actually see what's going on here. It's not the perfect illusion, but for the most part, it works great. And then once you create those icon images, well, you just create a shortcut to open whatever app you want. So on the top, it's opening Maps. On the middle, it's opening Music. And on the bottom, I've got Safari. It's a super simple process. In the description, I'll leave a video on, how to do this step by step. So I don't have to go through it here, but it took me just a few minutes. And then I'm doing a very similar thing on the bottom. The only difference here is that I've actually made those icons and added them to the shortcut. So for phone, I added my own icon there, and same for messages, and it just gives me this look. Now there is one trick here, like I mentioned earlier with the music section. Because of the way this is set up, I actually have two icons per row that let me click it. So if I'm using my left hand or my right hand, I'm able to tap each side of the phone and open it up. And so that also means for the music section, I can actually set two different apps depending on what I need. So for music, on one side, on the left, I have Apple Music. So if I tap that, it opens up Apple Music. But most of the time, I'm actually listening to podcasts and different audio from YouTube. And so on the right, I can click that and that will open up YouTube so I can listen to a podcast or listen to a video or whatever comes up. And because the phone is in black and white, well, I'm not sitting there watching videos. I really just click whatever I want to listen to and close it out. But that's a nice little trick that works here, and I use that a lot actually. Now there are a few other small details that I've added that make the phone just feel a little bit more functional. Like I said, this is an iPhone 13 mini. And so it doesn't have anything like Apple Intelligence or any of those features. And, I don't use Apple Intelligence all that often, but what I do find myself using pretty often is the ChatGPT integration. So if I just need a quick query, instead of typing it into the app, I can just, say it to Siri, and it actually does work pretty well. But I also love using many of these different AI models. So if I go to my lock screen, instead of opening Siri, well, on the bottom, I just have a shortcut that if I activate, I can open my favorite chat app. So I can go to ChatGPT, I've got Grok, I've got Perplexity. I can open all of these here, ask my question, be more productive with those chatbots instead of using Siri. There's no Apple Intelligence here. Apple Intelligence isn't that great to begin with, so this is the next best thing. And then the other thing I did here to make it a little bit more functional revolves around the camera. This is, again, an iPhone 13 mini, so I'm not, here for the camera quality necessarily, but there are those times I need to take a snapshot. I need to send someone a photo of something I'm looking at, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a receipt. There's tons of reasons why you want to take photos that aren't like, artwork photos. These are just practical, utilitarian photos that I need to take. And so if you open up the camera, well, it's still black and white. But, that's perfectly fine most of the time. If I'm just taking a snapshot, like a receipt or something like that, well, I don't really care about the color. I just need that for the information. So I can just, snap away and it works fine. But if I do actually care what the photo looks like, or I want to make sure that it's coming out right on those chances that that happens, well, I've added the shortcut to go ahead and just triple click the lock button. And now the color is back. And so I can quickly toggle between monochrome and color. And so that if I do need it, it's right there, but it's not something that is always on. And this goes for the entire system. If someone sends me a photo and I need to look at it, I can turn the color back on. It's simple, but it just makes the phone work for me rather than me having to work around the phone. So yeah, that is my setup for a minimal phone that gives me all the features that you kind of want from these minimal devices that have been pretty popular lately, but also gives you all the functionality that you're used to because of the world that we live in. There's this whole, philosophical debate of what these phones are doing to us, whether they are good for us. That's not the argument I'm really, trying to make here. The point is, it is nice to disconnect from your phone or not be so consumed by it. But at the same time, there are those times where you actually do need some of those things. And this, well, it gives you the best of both worlds. So this is how I did it. If you want to try it, I say go for it. And what I found after actually living with this is that it actually works. I don't sit on my phone doing random things all the time. It has turned into a more utilitarian device, which I really like. And it actually works, which is something I was a little skeptical of. I always thought with these minimal phones, you would kind of find workarounds, but it's like inconvenient enough that you kind of just stop using it. And really, that's the whole point.